Alright guys, welcome to Formula 1 News. Qualifying looms for the Monaco Grand Prix, one of the most important sessions of the entire season. It's Ferrari looking to turn their season around with Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, but their chief rivals on the day, McLaren and Max Verstappen, not at all happy about their progress on the day. Max fuming about multiple things about that Monaco session, but also McLaren, Piastri was in the wall, loads of other drama elsewhere as well. Very much on Twitter, your thoughts in the comments. Who's going to get pole in qualifying? Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I would greatly appreciate it. Just before we get started, I appreciate this video is far later than it would be ideal that it was, but I've had like the most insanely hectic day at the venue for this Call of Duty thing today. Like honestly, it's been complete chaos from start to finish, and I couldn't wait just to sit down and yap about Formula 1 for a couple of minutes, even if nobody listens because it's too late at night. But I'm sure some of you guys are waking up early in Europe talking about this. Like, let's just get into it, right? Because this is, as I say, is one of the most important sessions of the entire year. Charles Leclerc was asked the question before the weekend after what's happened in the previous couple of weekends. Imola, of course, qualifying wasn't great. Leclerc said it was totally unacceptable, and when quizzed on whether he would leave, he says, no, absolutely not, I believe in the project. And kind of in the classic Ferrari give-take way, maybe this is the weekend they finally show something good to give Leclerc some hope in the future of the project, but, you know, that's a question for another day. This is a big question, though. Max Verstappen got a new floor in the most recent race, and, well, there have been major changes, really. Okay, I think the new floor was actually in Miami. They brought some upgrades Red Bull to Imola, but Yuki Tsunoda didn't seem to get all of them, and apparently that will remain the case, that the upgrades they're fast-tracking for Max are not going to arrive onto Yuki's car. Could be a good or a bad thing, because, you know, you could argue the new upgrades are going to help Max even more, right, and make the car even more pointy at the front end, and it's going to hurt the second driver even more. I don't know, but yeah, Yuki says that he was running a different spec. The spec that they brought did seem to be a substantially improved specification for Imola, so, you know, this on paper would be hurting Tsunoda, you would think, but yeah, looks like he's going to have effectively a different car for the next few Grand Prix as Red Bull go all guns blazing to build everything they can for Max's car to give him the best chance of the championship. This is Ferrari's rear wing for the Monaco Grand Prix circuit, and it's the same as they had last year, like literally the same rear wing. They have a special high downforce Monaco wing. They used it last year, well, Charles Leclerc won, as we remember, in a great qualifying session, but not exactly a great race, as we full well know. And Ferrari are just going to Control-C, Control-V this wing for this year as well. Monaco, Singapore, other very high downforce circuits. This is the type of thing they will run. And, well, the results potentially speak for themselves today. Monaco Grand Prix upgrade list. Teams tend to bring quite a lot of circuit-specific stuff to Monaco. Pretty rare you see massive changes in overall performance, but as we see here, McLaren with one performance thing and then a 4 circuit-specific stuff. Ferrari bringing 4 items that are circuit-specific, a couple of performance upgrades up and down the grid, but yeah, maybe a surprisingly large amount of upgrades that the teams are bringing to Monaco. But of course, in Monaco, you never really know what it's going to do. And I will say about Monaco that a couple of years ago, I was like, you know what, do we really need Monaco anymore? It's unfit for purpose, right? You can't race around this circuit anymore, which is true, but I do think there is something still particularly spectacular about the circuit, and I think every year I go back there and watch it, I'm like, you know what, it's so unique and strange and kind of beautiful in the same way, and it does create, as I said, tomorrow in qualifying, one of the best sessions you're going to get of the year, because you probably know what's going to happen on Sunday. And to be fair, the pole to win conversion rate in Monaco is not actually as good as many other circuits on the calendar. It's good, don't get me wrong, but it's not spectacular, because things happen in Monaco, red flags happen, safety cars happen, rain happens, right, and there could be all sorts of drama still to unfold. But there was plenty of drama on the track. Lawson wasn't very happy with Hamilton getting in his way. I mean, look, of all the circuits where you're going to get impeded, this is the circuit where you're going to get impeded, right? Like, it is going to happen. Qualifying's going to be a mess. This was Hamilton slightly later in the session, nearly running into the back of an Alpine. It was, you know, all kinds of chaos up here. Hamilton was going up the hill, and they ran into 2 cars running pretty slowly, and, you know, had to slam on the brakes effectively. It was pretty dangerous. Speaking of dangerous, this is Lance Stroll, and I couldn't believe my eyes watching this. I don't know what was running through his head. The big drama, though, really around these whole incidents was around the amount of penalties that were accrued for the respective drivers. So this was Lance Stroll. Charles Leclerc's coming on a lap here, and Lance Stroll, I don't know, blue flags, no radio comms, whatever. He just pulls out to the right-hand side, I guess not aware or not caring that Charles Leclerc was coming through. Leclerc slams the brakes on, smashes into the back of Lance Stroll, destroys Stroll's session, and, well, also destroys is the front wing of Charles Leclerc. So an absolute shambles, really. And, Stroll on the radio says, and Leclerc is there, and, by the time they told him that, I just felt Leclerc crash into the back of me. I didn't hear you. So, yeah, I don't know, it's Lance Stroll things is what people are going to say, whether that's justified or not, and Charles Leclerc's front wing was toast, he had to come into the pits, but doesn't necessarily mean that Charles Leclerc is going to have a bad weekend, although I know that lots of Ferrari fans will not want to get ahead of themselves at the present time. Lance Stroll, for this incident, got a one-place grid penalty. The car stated although the team warned him of the arrival, he did not hear the radio message, and that led to the incident. Now, what do you guys think about this? Because it's pretty rare we see penalties for things that have unfolded in practice. Generally speaking, you don't tend to see it too much. There's usually fines and, reprimands and stuff like this, but relatively rarely penalties. Of course, they're also especially costly around Monaco. So definitely, I think, deserving of some sort of repercussion what Stroll did there, but whether it should be a one-place penalty is a question. But even if you don't think it should, or you think that it should, certainly what happens to Ollie Bearman, we'll get into in the coming minutes, is a whole, potentially anyway, different level of debate. Now, the funny thing was that Charles Leclerc was on the radio saying, the car is nowhere, one corner I'm understeering, one corner I'm oversteering, like what's going on? The car is slow. And then he goes purple, 1:11.9, 6 it on pole, or, not pole yet, 6 it P1 for the session, right? And yeah, ends the session P1. Charles Leclerc first, Max Verstappen second, Lando Norris third. Some familiar characters. Now look, is Leclerc unbelievable around Monaco? Yes. But to still be 2 tenths ahead of Max Verstappen and a couple of tenths further up the road as well from Lando Norris was pretty impressive. And the lap times at the end of the first session were looking as follows. Lance Stroll, of course, didn't get the opportunity to complete all that many. Of course, we could, even though they don't really exist, look at some race pace numbers, right? What do the race simulations look like? That's what we usually do after practice. But of course, Monaco is a bit of a different beast. Firstly, good luck getting any representative data in because you've got traffic everywhere all of the time. And also, who cares what the long run data is? That's not what's relevant. What's relevant around Monaco is how fast you are over a single lap, because you can't overtake, and the front runners can, if they want to during the Grand Prix, just drive very much within themselves and only accelerate through the tunnel to make sure they don't get overtaken into the chicane. Everywhere else they can just chill out and the car behind them has nothing they can do about it. But of course, this year the double stop mandatory strategy will make things pretty interesting, because the teams will have to decide what they do, and the front runners probably can't afford just to sit back and relax, because they could potentially get undercut with the mandatory 2-stop. So we'll probably get into that as well over, well, maybe the rest of the video as well. This is Isaac Hadjar, ends up in the wall, and he called himself, said he was dumb, stupid, whatever he said on the radio, kind of Charles Leclerc vibes there. Baku a few years ago. Yeah, bit of a moment. Look, it's Monaco. These things are going to happen. But the most notable thing, really, was this man, Oscar Piastri, into the wall at Zandvoort. So, comes into the first corner, gets a bit too hot, and realises that, I ain't making this corner. Now, what you don't want to do is what Perez did and end up slamming into the wall kind of rear first and having an issue that way, because then you're damaging gearbox or whatever. So Piastri decided, okay, I'm going to hit the wall, I'm just going to go in face first, destroy the front wing, yes, but the car is still intact. Not the end of the world, it happens, but I think indicative of a wider issue that the McLaren was certainly struggling with today, as were the other cars as well. But the big drama, because of the red flag here, was caused by Ollie Bearman, and he somehow got himself a 10-place grid drop for overtaking under red flag conditions. Now, well, this is very interesting. The red flag comes out round about here. You see the red flag flash up. Okay, it doesn't look yellow on this screen, but this is a red flag. And here I think is Carlos Sainz driving really rather slowly on the right-hand side. Bearman, look, he should see the red flag here and decelerate, very quickly probably, to make sure that he doesn't overtake Sainz. But he's on a fast lap at this point. He, sees the red flag and just reacts a bit too late and ends up passing him. But, also the Williams is going very, very slow here. So it's not like he's, gone for an overtake exactly. It just happens that he's overtaken him. But at this point, the red flag is out, and therefore that's not allowed. You're overtaking under red flag conditions. And look, the red flag comes out here, right? So it's not like he was right behind him. He had some time to react. But still, I think it seems rather harsh. I don't know if you guys feel similarly, but we don't see often grid place drops for stuff that happens in practice. And okay, sure, red flag, dangerous. I understand why they want to penalise this harshly, but, Lance Stroll got a one-place drop for destroying Charles Leclerc's car. Ollie Bearman overtakes another car, and perfectly safe, really. It's not like it was a dangerous move or anything in the circumstances. And okay, it was a red flag, which is definitely... it's deserved penalty, but did it deserve a penalty 10 times as severe as what, Lance Stroll got? Not in my opinion, right? So, yeah, I think that's pretty harsh. I mean, very, very harsh, I would say, to be honest, for Ollie Bearman. And of course, especially because it's Monaco, right? I mean, a 10-place grid drop around any other track is not great, obviously. You don't want a 10-place grid drop, certainly not for something that happened in practice. But, of course, you're adding that to the fact that it's Monaco, so good luck doing anything from there, right? I mean, you could stick it on pole and start P11 and still not score any points. That's probably not going to happen. Speaking of sticking it on pole, though, this was Charles Leclerc right in the barriers, right? Like, he was very, very close indeed to being, way too far over the line here and smashing his car into the wall. But this is what Charles Leclerc does. And I told you guys in the lead up to this Grand Prix, Leclerc will be on the absolute limit of the car because he knows that he needs to be. And it's Monaco. The driver can make a difference here by taking more risk. Leclerc obviously loves this track. He won here last year. This might be the chance to win, podium, whatever, for Ferrari this season around a unique circuit. Alonso came close in a few Grand Prix at the start of 2023, but his only real chance to win was Monaco, and they had the chance, Aston, if they'd have pit on the right lap. They didn't. Max Verstappen won. But look, who knows? Maybe this is it for Charles Leclerc. And his chief rivals are struggling. Piastri's in the wall. It was difficult for Lando to put too many good laps together. This was Max Verstappen fuming at Colapinto for blocking his run. And, he was basically clapping him. I think he clapped him as he drove past, which was pretty funny. So, Max wasn't happy. But this is also Max with a bit of a moment as well towards the end of the first sector. So, yeah, a few moments for Max Verstappen. He was struggling for pace as well. And at the end of the first session, or the second session, this is what the times looked like. Now, Piastri's lap time was still very fast, right? And it was right there. And it's worth considering that it's not like Piastri and McLaren are totally out of the fight here by any means. The McLarens, their sector one wasn't quite as strong. After that, they would put together some good last couple of sectors. So, look, is Piastri still favourite for pole? Is the McLaren still favourite for pole? Quite possibly that is the case. But, Leclerc was the fastest car. I think very similar lap times to last year's fastest lap times, 1:11.3, something in that kind of ballpark. Piastri was right there. Hamilton was right there as well. So, look, both Ferraris were there. It wasn't like it was just Charles Leclerc extracting the pace. Hamilton was right there within a tenth pretty much as Charles Leclerc as well. Piastri in the mix. Lando Norris a couple of tenths further back. And then it was all over the place, really. You've got Lawson, you've got Hadjar, you've got Alonso, you've got Albon, you've got Antonelli. And that's before you find the pair of Red Bulls at P10 and P11. So, multiple reasons for Max to be pretty frustrated on the day. But it's not like he was the only one. McLaren recognised that, a number of issues that they kind of still have with their car. Like, such a strange circuit right here at Monaco compared to many others that it does exemplify weaker elements of certain cars, and it's not like you design your car to be good at Monaco. Seemingly they do for Charles Leclerc sometimes, but it's not like that's really how it's meant to be. And McLaren have, a few issues in some of the lower speed corners and with their traction and stuff at times, and the rear stability that is pretty necessary out of some of the corners. They're kind of all collected to mean that their car is good, but it's probably not great. But it is seemingly better than the Red Bull, right? And that's the big debate of the day, as well as that Max was struggling to get a clean lap in, but also just struggling for pace and comfortability in the car. It shouldn't be a massive surprise. What's the big surprise is that it's working for Ferrari, because Red Bull have been quite clear their weakness is in the slower speed corners. They're best in the absolute maximum high speed stuff. They now seem to be much better in some of the medium speed stuff too, as we've seen back in Imola. But the slower speed stuff is still a big problem for Red Bull Racing. And around Monaco, that's what you have. The reason why yesterday we were talking about Ferrari it being an issue for them is because they made it pretty clear that, yeah, this season, which is unlike usual, but this season their slower speed corner performance and the traction is not so good as they would like it to be. But Monaco, I don't know, it's a magical circuit, and somehow Ferrari have unlocked something maybe with that special rear wing that they've brought on again that McLaren and Red Bull do not quite have the same levels of. But Max was, frustrated for multiple reasons, said it was, tricky with the traffic historically, but 2 times a day it was actually quite dangerous. He even went to say that it's too dangerous to have this disparity of speed. Something's got to be done about the slow cars and the quali cars, because around a normal track, you can go slow, but slow is not like slow. Slow is just relatively slow. But given the way the circuit is, if you're trying to get out the way of another driver, you have to really slow down, and that can create issues where you're running into the back of another car. We saw it with Stroll, obviously, and Leclerc. And Verstappen himself ran into it nearly a couple of times as well, but it's not like he was happy with the pace either. And this was Lewis Hamilton, though, who definitely was far happier with the performance, saying it was amazing, it was awesome, the coolest track ever to drive, the most fun, every year's a blast. FP1 was a bit of a challenge with traffic, but FP2, much, much better. Got a bit of time to find. Charles is very quick, but says a 10th in turn 1, basically, but then the car subtle changes they need to make. I will not be making any changes at all. So this is now the key question for Ferrari, right? They're P1, they're P3 after practice. People are hoping, Charles Leclerc fans, Ferrari fans are hoping maybe this is the weekends. But as you know, Red Bull will go overnight and make some serious changes. McLaren may as well if they feel like there's time to find. Ferrari have a question to make, right? Do you make any changes? What do you decide to do? Do you try something for FP3, and if it doesn't work, you go back to your FP2 setup? Maybe. Maybe that's worth the risk. Or do you just stick with it and hope that it works as plans? I don't know. It's a very interesting question. I'm sure that many Tifosa are just looking there thinking, please do not change anything from today because it was good and it was fine and it was good enough potentially to challenge and maybe even secure pole position, right? So, yeah, very interesting developments on the day. Ferrari's being back into the mix on some levels shouldn't be too much of a surprise, right? It's just how it is with Ferrari. Out of nowhere, they all of a sudden managed to deliver something pretty magical. But can they replicate that tomorrow? They've given the fans hope. Whether they can do that is now a very different question for you guys. I'm sure many of you guys listening, it is, of course, today in a few hours' time that this is all going to get underway. But very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments because, Max frustrated as well for multiple reasons. And also, speaking of Max, if he didn't need another yacht, he decided to buy one. And, I guess his first yacht, right? He's got his new private yacht. And if you want to help him get another yacht, then you could buy some Franz Hermann merch. But, very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comments. As I say, tomorrow I'll be at the venue again. And I'm sure that I'm here covering media for Call of Duty tournament, but today we were setting some things up and it was, everything was like complete chaos and a massive mess from start to finish. It was, a stressful day for sure. I'll try my best to get you guys some good content up tomorrow after qualifying. I won't be able to do the pre-show for qualifying. It's just not going to be able to happen because I've got to do a pre-show for something else. But I'll keep doing my best. And very much intrigued to your thoughts as always in the comments below. So hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.